All right, what's up, everybody? This is A7X Fan Ben, and this is another video battle report. This one for a 3-player 60-point game played in August 2023. So it was against Phillip and Chris, who are both really good players, actually. I would say they're pretty shrewd and savvy when it comes to this game. And it was in Tacoma, Washington at Terra Crux Games. Actually, it was down there combining some trips, pirates and nautical stuff. So I was able to see the Lady Washington is in the Pacific Northwest, and she was in Tacoma. So I went on there, visited that for the first time, and she played HMS Interceptor in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, so it was really cool to see her. And this is HMS Interceptor from the Caribbean set. Got a couple good picks by the ship, so it was pretty fun experience, pretty noteworthy. Highly recommend checking out the Lady Washington if you get the chance. And there's another one showing her at the dock there. So pretty awesome. And then I went to Foss Waterway Seaport, which is right next door to where the ship was docked at, and saw some cool stuff in there. My favorite being this pretty large model of HMS Discovery. So it was pretty awesome. And so we'll get into the fleets here. I was using the French, and it was based on my Ultimate Saber Attack combo, which is a fleet I made. It's more of a single ship setup than a fleet, but I made it at miniature trading some years back. So Saber's got Bonny Peel, that's the pirate crew, with captain and gold capture ability for 8 points. Commander Stephen Decatur with extra action and crew protect for 7. And I've got Jordan Dumas on their crew Benny National. You can use their abilities on the ship and reroll. So that allows the other 2 crew to use their abilities. And then the reroll pairs perfectly with the extra action ability. And then there's a helmsman as well. So the total crew setup comes to 22 points, so 45 total. And it makes the Saber a pretty nasty boarding monster that can potentially board multiple times in a turn, get a lot of shots in, and then goal is obviously to capture crew for gold. So, and gets +1 to board. So a fun setup. And then I've got, filling out the fleet, a couple gold runners. So Libellule with Cissey aboard. So his +5 allows Dumas to come into the fleet. And then Libellule's other crew is a face-down explorer. And Triton is, I would say, still probably the most underrated ship in the game and one of my favorite French ships. So she's empty, but rounds out the fleet nicely. So plenty of cargo. And got there a little early, and I knew my gold runners were kind of under-crewed a little bit just because of the point cost of the ships and whatnot, and the Saber setup being pretty expensive. So I put some abandoned crew in there. Protection from Davy Jones, ideally for the Saber eventually, so she could use extra actions to come out of whirlpools without damage, and then use her blades to attack enemy ships in like whirlpool raids. And then the ones are basically just because Bonny Peel for gold capture. I wanted her potential captures to be weighted higher in the total gold score in play. So the ones are kind of to bring down the average value of gold in play, so that Bonny Peel's captures might be rated at a higher weight when it comes to time to count. So, and then I'll get into the other players' fleets. I think the play order was me, then Phillip, then Chris. So Phillip had a Guichuan set up. So he had 30 points of crew aboard for a 1-ship fleet. So he had the Headhunter, Ocean's Edge, Davy Jones for all powerful. And he had Cavendish aboard. These were all face down, except for the Headhunter, of course, when the game started. And then Cavendish was face down for a while. He was there for Grim the Savage from Frozen North. So with the Home Island Horde ability and treasure ship, something I've talked about many times. And you may have seen it in my 6x150 2019 big game. So pretty cool combo, of course. And then also the helmsman. So the interesting thing about that setup was it maxed out at 60 points total. So there wasn't point space for a captain. So this is actually not a captained Guichuan. So we'll see how that plays out in the report. And then Chris came with the English. So he had HMS Apollo with Thomas Gunn from Rise of the Fiends. This is actually the limited edition version. You can see the 201 number there on the mast. It's the LE version of the Apollo with reroll, and that would pair perfectly with Sir Christopher Myngs, who has Born Leader, also known as SAT or Same Action Twice. So SAT with reroll, and then Captain Helmsman via Thomas Gunn. So only 2 crew, but still devastating ship moving up to SSS with 10 shots potentially. So he's got Maui's Fishhook for the main gold runner, and she was carrying 3 crew. I think there was an oarsman on there too, but main ones were Hermione Gold from Rise of the Fiends, just like Thomas Gunn has captain and helmsman for 5 points. And then Trevor Van Tyne, who's linked to Hermione Gold. He's got Musketeer for 2, basically, because of Hostile. And then Patagonia with typical setup of Robinson, Mycron, and Bratley. So gives him guaranteed double action for any other ship in his fleet once Patagonia gives up her action. And then the +5 crew as well, of course. So to get to 65 total. So those were the fleets. And we were ready to set sail. We were using the Seattle House rules. So there's a lot of different aspects of those, but I'll just put a link in the description below. That's why there's like some giant terrain and it's within SF Islands and stuff like that. So then we each contributed 8 coins of any value or type, 3 terrain each, with like up to 1 massive terrain per player, up to 1 medium, and then 1 regular. So, and there's my fleet there with Libellule, really pretty ship. Could easily pass for a USA ship too, with all the red, white, and blue all over the place there. So, all right. So first turn, Libellule explored. Triton went to an island, and then Saber went into a fog bank. Mycron went into a fog bank with Patagonia. So Chris wanted to lock up that guarantee that the Patagonia stayed safe throughout the game, so that he could always give a double action to one of his other ships, mostly the Maui's Fishhook, because Apollo had SAT with reroll. But anyway, and then Guichuan headed west to an island, got there. So with the Seattle House rules, all powerful 6s become 5s. So there's no like this got voted on back in 2022, so that you can't like control another player's ship with the 6 from all powerful. So anyway, so with 6s becoming 5s and 5s being like an admiral's action, give any ship in your fleet an extra action, but there's only 1 ship in the cursed fleet here, the Guichuan. So basically there was no need to roll for Davy Jones actually with all powerful. It was always just an extra action for Guichuan due to the house rule and there only being 1 ship in the fleet. So Guichuan was just basically going to get 2 actions the entire game. So like every turn, like no matter what. And then you can see the Apollo moving southeast there, splitting up from the Maui's Fishhook. So, and then Guichuan came around. Maybe Phillip went first now that I'm looking at this. But anyway, so Guichuan used an extra action, came around, rammed off Libellule's mast, but more importantly, used the Headhunter's ability to hoard all her coins. So stole it up there. And then Libellule returned home. Thinking about keeping the Guichuan pin, but then she would just shoot my mast off, so she'd sink the ship. So she returned home to try to survive. Triton explored, found turtles, and you can see some tokens that Chris made for that UT. And so got the turtles in the water. Triton had some gold as well, no reef damage. And then Saber got an extra action from Decatur, round earth. So the Maui's Fishhook had already round earthed to that northwestern island, and then Saber pursued her out of the fog bank, got a good fog bank roll, and then with the extra action came around to slam into the ship, use the blades. But as we'll see soon, it wasn't the end of that combat, so was able to take out the mast though, so that's good. And captured Lady Camille with Bonny Peel actually. So things would quickly turn south for me. HMS Apollo got an SAT and came over that. I think she came over that huge Sargasso Sea, or round earth, one of the two, and slammed into the Saber, took out all the Saber's masts, and then my unique treasures started backfiring. They backfired bad. They like really helped Chris a lot in this game. But he made some real good plays with them. He used them perfectly, and so Maui's Fishhook he flipped the abandoned shipwright on Maui's Fishhook to pop a mast up there. And then, so that ship was back in action, but then Saber was out. So the English had the advantage in that battlefield. And then, so Triton came home with her gold, but then Guichuan, I think she ghosted through, I think, Libellule, and then started going after the turtles. So the curse were going after the little poor turtles. And then Mycron, of course, in the fog bank on Patagonia was given double actions on the other 2 English ships, like every turn. So there's more of the carnage there. So Hoist taken out by the Switchblade, and then limited edition Apollo takes out the Saber. And then, so the Saber was captured. So here she's repaired, but that's not my ship anymore. So I think Maui's Fishhook was given. She was the one that towed her, I think. So the English captured the Saber, and then the Maui's Fishhook transferred. I think the Saber was given an explorer action to get the shipwright from the Maui's Fishhook. And in the Seattle House rules, it looks like too many cargo because abandoned crew do take up space once they're flipped. But Seattle House rules, we have a house rule: shipwrights don't take up cargo space. Probably just try to make them more useful and encourage more use. So that's why it fits there. And then Saber, with an extra action, was able to repair 2 masts. So a decent swing there in favor of the English away from the French. And Maui's Fishhook has returned home with gold. And then Libellule and Triton are going back out for more. Kind of want to get away from the Guichuan as well. So Libellule headed southwest. Triton whirled into the southeast towards that unexplored wild island at the bottom right. And then Apollo came through. I think she got stuck briefly on the Sargasso, but only for 1 turn. So she's about to start moving away from it. And Guichuan is busy killing turtles up in the north. So Saber with the shipwright aboard. Guichuan just taking out turtles left and right. So it does end your move action. So she could only take out 2 per turn, but Phillip was determined to kill them all. So she's busy running them over there. And then big thing here was I knew I was like really unlikely to win because my gunship had been taken by the English. And keep in mind, so now I just had the 2 gold runners with hardly any crew on them. And then all 4 ships in the other fleets outside of Mycron, so like Apollo, Maui's Fishhook, Saber, Guichuan, all of them had extra action capability. Sometime in 2 out of those 4 cases, guaranteed. And all those ships have some firepower. Most of them had captains, and then the Guichuan, of course, has 10 masts. So I was very unlikely to win any kind of engagements. So I knew I had to build a fort. So I built Paradis de la Mer, and the island I explored in the southwest. This was partly the original idea behind that was because Guichuan, I pretty much knew Grim the Savage was on Guichuan. There's no reason. I mean, once you see the Viking flag on a Guichuan or any treasure ship, you're probably dealing with Frozen North Grim the Savage and Home Island Horde ability, where you can take all your coins at once with a Home Island raid. And so I knew Guichuan was probably going to raid my home island soon anyway, whether or not the turtles were killed in transit. So Guichuan was still right off my home island up top there. So it's partly a fort strategic play to warp the gold out of the Guichuan's sites and get it into a more secure location and get some, also just to get more guns up. So Apollo was right there too. So I was like, okay, you're not going to take the rest of this gold. So Libellule loaded some, and then Paradis was there also just to get more guns in my fleet because I had lost Saber, but Paradis is the strongest fort in the game and has some good accuracy, some good L-range cannons and whatnot. So got me back in the fight a little bit. Apollo had docked there, but Libellule explored it, had already explored it. And then, so got the fort up there. Maui's Fishhook is repairing there, and then Triton docked at the southeastern island. And Saber, I don't know if she got another extra action already, but she's already full repaired with that shipwright. So, and then here, just showing a close-up of the 6 I used for my home island to build the fort. And then, so Apollo came after the fort, but I think Chris had a real tough turn rolling dice here. I think Apollo on her first shoot action, or her first move and shoot with same action twice, I think she went 0 for 5. So anyway, and then eventually he landed a hit on Paradis once it ignored some hits via the really overpowered fort ability. But on the next turn, between the fort and Libellule, I was able to dismass the Apollo. So I was hoping to take that ship, but we'll see how that goes here. And then Saber repaired. She was started threatening the Guichuan, who was almost done killing the turtles. And then in the bottom right, you can see Maui's Fishhook has, I think, used Mycron to come over and smash up the Triton after the Triton loaded some gold from that southeast island. And then we get a close-up of that here. So the English were a real terror in this game. They had multiple ships capable of doing quite a bit of damage in a short span of time. So, and then here, Libellule got rammed, but Apollo was dismassed by the French, mostly because of the fort. And so Saber was threatening Guichuan. Phillip Philip had a decision to make about he really wanted to take out the turtles, but he knew he didn't want to deal with Saber too much. So with no captain, Guichuan was it was an interesting situation. So he had to basically use one action to get in range and then the second one to shoot. But he did shoot well and dismasked the Saber. So for the second time, the Switchblade had lost all her masts. But she was able to use the shipwright and an extra action to repair and move away. So she was able to actually make a good effort at getting away from the Guichuan on Chris's turn. But Chris was able to salvage the Apollo. So I'm pretty sure the way it worked was Maui's Fishhook got an action from the Patagonia via Mycron to go through the whirlpool. Then he used the free action from the hoist, like free explorer, after coming through the whirlpool over here by Paradise, and then give an oarsman. I can't remember if it was that abandoned oarsman or just a regular one, but he gave an oarsman to HMS Apollo, and then Maui's Fishhook used her second full action to go back through the whirlpool to the southeast, and then Apollo at that point still had helmsman as well, so she was able to row S+S into the whirlpool and return to home waters. So pretty great play to salvage the 5-master there. And then Triton has some gold and has emerged through the whirlpool on, like, theoretically the Saber side of Libellule to try to get that gold into the fort. Because at this point, I didn't really want to. I did get 2 turtles home because Guichuan was distracted by Saber, so 2 turtles did get home. So a couple survived, but I didn't really want gold on my home island at this point. I was kind of just playing to put it all in the fort. Guichuan, I didn't have anything that could compete with Guichuan with Saber out. So I just wanted gold in the fort. At least the fort would be able to protect the gold a little bit compared to Grim the Savage, which would just be able to take anything from a home island at will, basically. So, and then this shows the Guichuan continuing to go after the Saber. So she was able to ram and board, take out the last mast, and the Headhunter won the boarding party, of course, and slaughtered the Saber's full crew complement. So all those crew out of the game. And at this point, Saber was a non-factor from this point on. So Guichuan essentially finished her off here. She was just kind of sitting there for most of the rest of the game, I think. And then at the bottom left, Libellule was, I had designs on that northwestern island via Round Earth, but I knew I was somewhat unlikely to get there next because of all the ships in play having so many double actions available. And then Triton's just kind of going to try to repair. She does unload some gold, so at this point I was looking decent with a bunch of gold in the fort. But of course, you know, the fort's probably not going to stand up to the kind of firepower that's still in play. So Apollo gets home and repairs the masts, and Maui's Fishhook is coming back to a little bit. So here, I can't remember why I didn't keep going to the Northwest Island. I think it was because Maui's Fishhook was going to get there first, and or Guichuan. So Guichuan finally came home and docked home a couple coins, and then Apollo is busy repairing pretty quickly, and then Triton is fully repaired. And then I wanted to defend the fort, so Guichuan was making some advances there, and so I put up Libellule and Triton to try to beef up the fort's flags, because Apollo had taken out 1 flag, so the fort was down to 4, but still pretty good cannons, a couple 2Ls and a couple 3Ls. And then Guichuan came in and I think rolled high for Paradise, I believe. Like, I think Phillip got a high roll for the fort, so it seemed more advantageous to just blast the ships and leave the fort alone this turn. So Libellule was sunk, and that netted Phillip 1 gold from de Cissey's ransom payout. And then Triton was dismasted. So at this point, I have no like actual masts in my fleet, but at least tried to get repair to try to keep me in the game. And then, but now Chris had designs on the fort's gold as well, of course, and wanted to hurt the Guichuan. Apollo came through the whirlpool with the same action twice from Myngs and slammed a ton of mass off, and then the fort got booming as well, so Paradise smashed some mass off. So the Guichuan, I think, went from like 10 mass to 2 in that round, so pretty devastating shots from both sides here, taking shots on both sides of the hull and broadside. So, and then Triton repairs the mast, but is quickly sunk afterwards by the Apollo, taking out my last ship. But at least I still got the fort, so I was able to continue playing through the fort, her cannons, which were in range a lot in this late game part of the late phase of the game. So this is where things got pretty desperate and crazy. The fort got slammed up by Maui's Fishhook down to 2 cannons, but once it only had 2 cannons remaining, it's almost like the crew in the fort rallied. It became like even more durable. So Chris was rolling 4s and 5s on Paradise's fort ability, like how many hits it has to take each turn before it gets damaged. He was rolling 4 and 5s like pretty much every turn. So Maui's Fishhook has the ship, or not the ship, right? The Musketeer from Trevor Van Tyne. But even with that and Mycron's double actions, like 8 shots per turn, even with that, Maui's Fishhook was not able to take flags off the fort for probably at least 3 or 4 turns of this late game, including like 2 or 3 turns in a row. And you can see here the fort has responded against HMS Apollo and has smashed her up for the second time. So I knew Paradise was my only chance of staying in the game, so I had to build it earlier. And we can see how broken it was, because even with no ships, it kept me in the game for kind of an almost astounding amount of time. So, and then Guichuan has gone home to repair. And Guichuan, so this things were, it was kind of a crazy game, actually. So Maui's Fishhook at this point had relics and metal hull aboard. She'd been carrying, I think, both of those for quite some time, actually. She found those early in the game. I think one was transferred to her, but so she had some pretty severe defenses. Because metal hull, you can only be hit on a 6. It reduces your base move to S, but with Mycron giving the ship double actions and all the whirlpools in play, it wasn't a huge hindrance to have the speed slowed to S plus S total speed. But then also the relics. So you have to you can give the relics to an opponent if they would eliminate a master crew, and then it ends the attacking ship's turn. So couple of defensive UTs along with protection from Davy Jones. So that meant Maui's Fishhook could go through whirlpools at will without having to roll for damage. So Maui's Fishhook, those UTs really helped her. Chris had put in a bunch of random UTs for his gold contribution at the outset, and I think that's where the relics and metal hull came from. So Guichuan has come through the whirlpool, sunk HMS Apollo, but then Maui's Fishhook is there. So this is a weird situation where Maui's Fishhook was able to use her ship's ability to randomly take a treasure from any ship with an Saber, including an enemy ship, and basically steal the Guichuan's coins once in a while. And or at least there was the threat of that happening, which got pretty weird. So anyway, so we'll go through kind of the end game phase here. It was almost like a super powered Maui's Fishhook versus the Guichuan versus Paradise de la Mer. So each had like this like weirdly like somewhat overpowered game piece, and it was kind of like this weird matchup. So I only had the fort, but it kept just resisting hits like crazy. I mean, there were times when Maui's Fishhook would unload in the fort and hit, like for example, you have to hit the fort 5 times, and he would go like 4 for 8 with the Maui's Fishhook between 2 actions, and but just do no damage. So it was crazy. And Guichuan is taking the opportunity while Maui's Fishhook is banging away at the fort. Guichuan repairs, but then she got hit again. So Chris and Phillip would kind of take a break from going after the fort, because Chris was able to try to hit the fort while Guichuan was repairing. But then once Guichuan repaired, she'd come back out, and Chris knew Grim the Savage was on Guichuan, so he didn't want to let Guichuan raid his own home island because he had at least 1 coin there. And so then Maui's Fishhook would go after the Guichuan and had the advantage because MF still had a captain and Guichuan did not have a captain, and Maui has those defensive UTs as well. So Guichuan got smashed up again by the hoist, and then it was a weird thing where Phillip didn't want to trigger the relics UT, so he was trying to ram without winning the ram roll, and I think he was able to do that twice. He was trying to, because if you win the ram has to happen before the board. So then if you ram a mast off, Chris could give relics to the Guichuan and end the Guichuan's turn right there. So he was trying to ram without succeeding, which he was able to do. But then, but I think he lost the boarding parties afterwards because he wanted to use the Headhunter to kill, either take the UTs away from Maui's Fishhook or take out the crew via the Headhunter's like dual massacre and horde abilities. But the Guichuan lost the boarding parties, so then she lost Grim the Savage and Cavendish because of that, and eventually was down to just Davy Jones and a helmsman, I think. So yeah, so it was crazy. This late game period was desperate, and it was a lot of back and forth with like not a lot of progress. It was like Paradis just resisting shots, like resisting hits like crazy, and then Guichuan repairing and Maui's Fishhook like frustratingly trying to deal with both, but not succeeding at either for a while. So eventually, of course, the fort fell. There was just too many cannons in play and too much repairing. And also, one of the factors was the end game rules where in a 3-player game, 2 out of the 3 have to be out of the game for that end game rule to trigger, or all gold available has been unloaded at home islands. And that was the one we were likely to be playing for because Patagonia was always going to keep Chris in the game realistically, and Phillip was never going to let the Guichuan sink basically because his home island was close to a lot of the action. There were all these whirlpools, so he was able to keep repairing Guichuan like many times over, and she was able to repair quickly 2 mass per turn with Davy Jones. So realistically, I was hoping that kind of earlier in the game, around this point, or maybe it was before that, that somehow like Maui's Fishhook would take out Guichuan and have 2 players eliminated. But of course, Chris was too smart to do that, and he had no gold at this point. So so I was kind of hoping that would somehow happen or something weird would happen. But anyway, so eventually the fort was taken out, which took me out of the game. I still had 2 gold from the turtles, but fort gold was loaded by Guichuan. But then Maui's Fishhook was able to use her ability to raid Guichuan for some of those coins before Guichuan was able to dock. And then soon after the game ended with all available gold